Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast. I am your host, Iman Chowdhury, and in today's podcast, we will delve into a transformative movement known as the Arab Spring. Over the next 10 minutes of this podcast, we will explore the origins, key impacts, and the lingering effects of this historic wave of protests and uprisings that swept across the Arab world. The Arab Spring was a series of pro-democracy uprisings and protests that swept across several countries in the Middle East and North Africa regions starting in late 2010 and continuing into 2011 and beyond. It was characterized by widespread social unrest, mass demonstrations, and demands for political reform, economic justice, and human rights. Now, I would like to focus on the root causes of the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring was fueled by a combination of factors including political repression, economic stagnation, widespread corruption, high unemployment rates, and demographic pressures. These issues had been simmering beneath the surface for years, and the catalyst for the uprisings was the self-immolation of Mohamed Bouazizi, a Tunisian street vendor, in December 2010. His act of protest against government corruption and harassment sparked nationwide demonstrations in Tunisia, which eventually led to the ousting of President Zain al-Abidine bin Ali in January 2011. I would like to comment on Mohamed Bouazizi and him being a street vendor in Tunisia and his act of protest against obviously government corruption was so remarkable that it struck nationwide protest. And not nationwide, these same protests were stressed along other Arabian countries, which goes to show that many individuals in these countries share the same concerns and have the same thought process against their government, however, are too afraid to speak up. Therefore, it took one brave man to start a significant movement. Now, touching on how I was just speaking on the spread of the protest, the success of the Tunisian revolution inspired similar movements across the Arab world. Tunisia served as the catalyst for the Arab Spring, where mass demonstrations led to the ousting of President Zain al-Abidine bin Ali in January 2011, like I mentioned before. The success of the Tunisian revolution inspired similar movements in other countries, including North African country, Egypt, Libya, Yemen, Syria, Bahrain, and beyond. Now I would like to focus a little bit on each country and how they started the protests and how their citizens were affected and whatnot. So to begin with, in Egypt, iconic protest in Cairo's Tahrir Square captured global attention, culminating in the resignation of President Hosni Mubarak in February 2011 after 30 years in power. However, the euphoria of the revolution soon gave way to political uncertainty and instability. Now focusing on Libya. Meanwhile, in Libya, demonstrations against the autocratic rule of Muammar Gaddafi escalated into a full-scale civil war. It was, of course, so extreme that NATO intervention was required, aimed to protecting civilians and supporting the rebel forces, ultimately led to Gaddafi's downfall and death in October of 2011. However, Libya plunged into chaos and became a breeding ground for extremism and violence. Now focusing on Syria, the other country that was involved in the Arab Spring that I would like to touch on. Syria's uprising, initially driven by calls for democratic reforms, devolved into a brutal civil war characterized by government crackdowns, sectarian divisions, and external interventions. The conflict, which continues to this day, has resulted in immense human suffering, displacement, and geopolitical complexities. Now focusing on other concerns such as the regional impact. The wave of protests quickly spread to other countries in the region, including Libya, Yemen, Bahrain, and Syria. Each country had its unique socio-political context, of course, but the common thread was a demand for political reform, greater civil liberties, and an end to autocratic regimes. Touching back on Bouaziz in January 2011, who started all these, was that the concerns again are same, but however needed the one push start to get everything going. The outcome variations I would like to also focus on. The outcomes of the Arab Spring varied from country to country. Of course, in some cases like Tunisia and Egypt, long-standing dictators were ousted and relatively peaceful transitions to democratic governance began. However, in other countries, like Libya and Yemen, the uprisings descended into prolonged conflicts with devastating humanitarian consequences. Bahrain forced a harsh crackdown on protest by the ruling monarchy, while Syria descended into a brutal civil war that continues to this day. A decade later, legacy of the Arab Spring is complex and multifaceted. While some countries have made progress towards democratization and reform, others remain mired in instability, repression, or authoritarianism. The rise of extremist groups, refugee crisis, and geopolitical realignments further underscore the enduring impact of the Arab Spring on the global landscape. Now, I would like to focus on challenges to democracy. Despite initial optimism, the transition to democracy in many Arab Spring countries has been challenging. Political instability, economic struggles, sectarian divisions, and the rise of extremist groups have hindered progress towards democratic governance and stability. Individuals want to see progress, however, these challenges to democracy are still evident that hold them back from a successful democracy. The international response on the matter of the Arab Spring is something remarkable, and I couldn't not include in my podcast. The international community played various roles during the Arab Spring. Some countries like the United States and European nations initially supported the uprisings while urging for peaceful transitions to respect for human rights. However, interventions in Libya and limited support for opposition forces in Syria raised great questions about the West's motives and the complexities of intervention. Lastly, the legacy and lessons of the Arab Spring. I'm so sorry I keep on going on and on. It's a lot of information. However, it is a great movement, and I just wanted to include as much as I can. The Arab Spring brought attention to the aspirations of millions of people in the region for dignity, freedom, and democracy. The Arab Spring had far-reaching consequences both regionally and globally. While some countries experienced brief moments of optimism and political change, as per mentioned before, others descended into prolonged conflict. The movement also highlighted the power of grassroots activism, social media, and youth mobilization in challenging entrenched power structures. It also highlighted the complexities and challenges of political change, especially in the context of fragile states and deeply entrenched power structures. The legacy of the Arab Spring continues to shape the political landscape of the Middle East and North Africa, serving as a reminder of both the potential and the pitfalls of popular movements for change. In summary, I promise, guys, I won't be holding you to it any longer. The Arab Spring was a transformative period in the history of the Middle East and North Africa, marked by popular uprisings against autocratic regimes and demands for political reform and social justice. While it led to significant changes in some countries, the aftermath of the uprisings also exposed the deep-rooted challenges and complexities of democratizations in the region. And that's all. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Arab Spring. Be sure to tune in next time for more insightful discussions on key historical events and contemporary issues. Until then, take care and stay serious. I have included a bibliography of the 5 scholarly sources and a references page alongside of how I got all this information from, in case someone wants to go in further into the websites, as well as my email is also on the bottom of the doc. If anyone has any more questions, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you all. Bye-bye.